The reading of the most set-apart scripture, Genesis through Revelation. The third book of the Torah, Wayyiqra, also known as Leviticus. Chapter 8. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, and the anointing oil, and the bull of the sin offering, and the 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread, and assemble all the congregation at the door of the tent of appointment. And Moshe did as YAHUAH commanded him, and the congregation was assembled at the door of the tent of appointment. And Moshe said to the congregation, This is the word YAHUAH commanded to be done. So Moshe brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water, and put the long shirt on him, and girded him with the girdle, and dressed him in the robe, and put the shoulder garment on him, and girded him with the embroidered band of the shoulder garment, and with it tied the shoulder garment on him, and put the breastplate on him, and put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastplate, and put the turban on his head. And on the turban, on its front, he put the golden plate, the set-apart sign of dedication, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And Moshe took the anointing oil and anointed the dwelling place and all that was in it, and set them apart. And he sprinkled some of it on the slaughter place 7 times, and anointed the slaughter place and all its utensils, and the basin and its base, to set them apart. And he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head, and anointed him to set him apart. And Moshe brought the sons of Aaron, and put long shirts on them, and girded them with girdles, and put turbans on them, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And he brought the bull for the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull for the sin offering. And it was slain. And Moshe took the blood and put some on the horns of the slaughter place, all around, with his finger, and cleansed the slaughter place. And he poured the blood at the base of the slaughter place, and set it apart to make atonement for it. And he took all the fat that was on the entrails, and the appendage, on the liver, and the 2 kidneys with their fat, and Moshe burned them on the slaughter place. And the bull, and its skin, and its flesh, and its dung he burned with fire outside the camp, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And he brought the ram of the ascending offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and it was slain. And Moshe sprinkled the blood on the slaughter place all around, and he cut the ram into pieces, and Moshe burned the head and the pieces and the fat, and he washed the entrails and the legs in water, and Moshe burned the entire ram on the slaughter place. It was an ascending offering for a sweet fragrance, and an offering made by fire to YAHUAH, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And he brought the second ram, the ram of ordination, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and it was slain. And Moshe took some of its blood and put it on the tip of Aaron's right ear, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And he brought near the sons of Aaron, and Moshe put some of the blood on the tips of their right ears, and on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. And Moshe sprinkled the blood on the slaughter place all around, and took the fat and the fat tail, and all the fat that was on the entrails, and the appendage on the liver, and the two kidneys, and their fat, and the right thigh. And from the basket of unleavened bread that was before YAHUAH, he took one unleavened cake, and a cake of bread anointed with oil, and one thin cake, and put them on the fat, and on the right thigh, and placed all these in the hands of Aaron, and in the hands of his sons, and waved them as a wave offering before YAHUAH. Moshe then took them from their hands and burned them on the slaughter place, on the ascending offering. They were ordinations for a sweet fragrance. It was an offering by fire to YAHUAH. And Moshe took the breast and waved it, a wave offering before YAHUAH. It was Moshe's portion of the ram of ordination. And YAHUAH had commanded, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And Moshe took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood which was on the slaughter place, and sprinkled it on Aaron, on his garments, and on his sons, and on the garments of his sons with him. And he set apart Aaron, his garments, and his sons, and the garments of his sons with him. And Moshe said to Aaron and his sons, cook the flesh at the door of the tent of appointment, and eat it there with the bread that is in the basket of the ordinations, as I have commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons are to eat it. Then burn the rest of the flesh and the bread with fire. And do not go outside the door of the tent of appointment for 7 days, until the days of your ordination are completed. For he fills your hands for 7 days. YAHUAH has commanded to do as he has done this day to make atonement for you. And stay at the door of the tent of appointment day and night for 7 days. And you shall guard the duty of YAHUAH and not die, for so I have been commanded. And Aaron and his sons did all the words that YAHUAH had commanded by the hand of Moshe. Chapter 9. And on the 8th day it came to be that Moshe called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Yisrael. And he said to Aaron, take for yourself a young bull as a sin offering, and a ram as an ascending offering, a perfect one, and bring them before YAHUAH. And speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, take a male goat as a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both a year old, perfect ones, as an ascending offering, and a bull and a ram as peace offerings to slaughter before YAHUAH, and a grain offering mixed with oil. For today YAHUAH shall appear to you. And they took what Moshe commanded before the tent of appointment, and all the congregation drew near and stood before YAHUAH. And Moshe said, this is the word which YAHUAH commanded you to do, so that the esteem of YAHUAH appears to you. And Moshe said to Aaron, go to the slaughter place and prepare your sin offering and your sending offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people, and make the offering of the people, and make atonement for them, as YAHUAH has commanded. So Aaron came near to the slaughter place and slew the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aaron brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the slaughter place, and poured the blood at the base of the slaughter place, and the fat, and the kidneys, and the appendage on the liver of the sin offering he burned on the slaughter place, as YAHUAH had commanded Moshe. And the flesh and the skin he burned with fire outside the camp. And he slew the ascending offering, and the sons of Aaron presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled on the slaughter place all around. And they presented the ascending offering to him, with its pieces and head, and he burned them on the slaughter place. And he washed the entrails and the legs, and burned them with the ascending offering on the slaughter place. And he brought the people's offering, and took the goat, which was the sin offering for the people, and slew it, and made it a sin offering, like the first one. And he brought the ascending offering, and made it according to the right ruling. He also brought the grain offering, and filled his hand with it, and burned it on the slaughter place, besides the ascending offering of the morning. And he slew the bull and the ram as a slaughtering of peace offerings, which were for the people. And Aaron's sons presented to him the blood, which he sprinkled on the slaughter place all around, and the fat from the bull and the ram, the fat tail, and the covering, and the kidneys, and the appendage on the liver. And they placed the fat on the breast, and he burned the fat on the slaughter place. But the breast and the right thigh Aaron waved as a wave offering before YAHUAH, as Moshe had commanded. Aaron then lifted up his hand toward the people and blessed them, and came down from making the sin offering, and the ascending offering, and the peace offerings. And Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of appointment, and came out and blessed the people. And the esteem of YAHUAH appeared to all the people. And fire came out from before YAHUAH, and consumed the ascending offering, and the fat on the slaughter place. And all the people saw and cried aloud, and fell on their faces. Chapter 10. And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his fire holder, and put fire in it, and put incense on it, and brought strange fire before YAHUAH, which he had not commanded them. And fire came out from YAHUAH, and consumed them, and they died before YAHUAH. Then Moshe said to Aaron, "This is what YAHUAH spoke, saying, by those who come near me, let me be set apart, and before all the people, let me be esteemed." And Aaron was silent. And Moshe called to Mishael and to Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Come near, take your brothers from before the set apart place out of the camp." So they came near and took them by their long shirts out of the camp, as Moshe had said. And Moshe said to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, his sons, "Do not unbind your heads, nor tear your garments, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the people. But let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail the burning which YAHUAH has kindled, and do not go out from the door of the tent of appointment, lest you die. For the anointing oil of YAHUAH is upon you. And they did according to the word of Moshe. And YAHUAH spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die, a law forever throughout your generations. So as to make a distinction between the set apart and the profane, and between the unclean and the clean, and to teach the children of Israel all the laws which YAHUAH has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. And Moshe spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons, who were left, take the grain offering that is left over from the offerings made by fire to YAHUAH, and eat it without leaven beside the slaughter place, for it is most set apart, and you shall eat it in a set apart place, because it is yours by law, and your sons by law, of the offerings made by fire to YAHUAH, for so I have been commanded. And the breast of the wave offering, and the thigh of the contribution you eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with you, for they are yours by law, and your sons by law, which are given from the slaughterings of peace offerings of the children of Israel. The thigh of the contribution and the breast of the wave offering they bring with the offerings of fat made by fire to bring as a wave offering before YAHUAH. And it shall be yours and your sons with you by a law forever, as YAHUAH has commanded. And Moshe diligently looked for the goat of the sin offering and saw it was burned up. And he was wroth with Eleazar and Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, who were left, saying, why have you not eaten the sin offering in a set apart place, since it is most set apart? And Elohim has given it to you to bear the crookedness of the congregation, to make atonement for them before YAHUAH. See, its blood was not brought inside the set apart place. You should have eaten it without fail in a set apart place, as I have commanded. And Aaron said to Moshe, see, today they have brought their sin offering and their ascending offering before YAHUAH, and matters like these have come to me. If I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been right in the eyes of YAHUAH? And when Moshe heard that, it was good in his eyes. Chapter 11. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying to them, speak to the children of Israel, saying, these are the living creatures, which you do eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatever has a split hoof, completely divided, chewing the cud among the beasts, that you do eat. Only these you do not eat among those that chew the cud, or those that have a split hoof, the camel, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean to you. And the rabbit, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean to you. And the hare, because it chews the cud, but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean to you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof, completely divided, yet does not chew the cud. It is unclean to you. Their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you do not touch. They are unclean to you. These you do eat of all that are in the waters. Anyone that has fins and scales in the waters, in the seas, or in the rivers, that you do eat. But all that have not fins and scales in the seas and in the rivers, all that move in the waters, or any living being which is in the waters, they are an abomination to you. They are an abomination to you. Of their flesh you do not eat, and their carcasses you abominate. All that have not fins or scales in the waters are an abomination to you. And these you do abominate among the birds. They are not eaten, they are an abomination. The eagle, and the vulture, and the black vulture, and the hawk, and the falcon, after its kind, every raven after its kind, and the ostrich, and the nighthawk, and the seagull, and the hawk after its kind, and the little owl, and the fisher owl, and the great owl, and the white owl, and the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that creep on all fours is an abomination to you. Only these you do eat of every flying insect that creeps on all fours, those which have jointed legs above their feet with which to leap on the earth. These of them you do eat. The arbor locust after its kind, and the solam locust after its kind, and the hargol locust after its kind, and the hagab locust after its kind. But all other flying insects which have 4 feet are an abomination to you, and by these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcass of any of them is unclean until evening. And anyone picking up part of the carcass of any of them has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. Every beast that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean. And whatever goes on its paws among all the creatures that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean until evening. And he who picks up their carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you among the creeping creatures that creep on the earth, the mole, and the mouse, and the tortoise after its kind, and the gecko, and the land crocodile, and the sand reptile, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Anyone who touches them when they are dead becomes unclean until evening. And whatever any of them in its dead state falls upon becomes unclean, whether it is any wooden object or garment or skin or sack, any object in which work is done, it is put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. Any earthen vessel into which any of them falls, whatever is in it becomes unclean, and you break it. Any of the food which might be eaten, on which water comes, becomes unclean, and any drink which might be drunk from it becomes unclean. And on whatever any of their carcass falls becomes unclean. And oven or cooking range, it is broken down. They are unclean and are unclean to you. But a fountain or a well, a collection of water, is clean. But whatever touches their carcass is unclean. And when any of their carcass falls on any planting seed which is to be sown, it is clean. But when any water is put on the seed, and any part of any such carcass falls on it, it is unclean to you. And when any of the beasts which are yours for food dies, he who touches its carcass becomes unclean until evening. And he who eats of its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And he who picks up its carcass has to wash his garments, and shall be unclean until evening. And every swarming creature, the one that swarms on the earth, is an abomination. It is not eaten. Whatever crawls on its stomach, and whatever goes on all fours, and whatever has many feet among all swarming creatures, the ones swarming on the earth, these you do not eat, for they are an abomination. Do not make yourselves abominable with any swarming creature, the one swarming, and do not make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I am YAHUAH, your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. And do not defile yourselves with any swarming creature, the one creeping on the earth. For I am YAHUAH, who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. This is the Torah of the beasts and the birds and every living being, the creeping creature in the waters, and of every being that swarms on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, and between the living creature that is eaten and the living creature that is not eaten. Chapter 12. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, When a woman has conceived and has given birth to a male, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her monthly separation. She is unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised. And she remains in the blood of her cleansing 33 days. She does not touch whatever is set apart, and she does not come into the set apart place until the days of her cleansing are completed. But if she gives birth to a female child, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her monthly separation, and she remains in the blood of her cleansing for 66 days. And when the days of her cleansing are completed, for a son or for a daughter, she brings to the priest a lamb 1 year old as an ascending offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering to the door of the tent of appointment. And he shall bring it before YAHUAH and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the flow of her blood. This is the Torah for her who has given birth to a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as an ascending offering, and the other as a sin offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be clean. Chapter 13. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, when a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest. And the priest shall look at the infection on the skin of the body. And if the hair on the infection has turned white, and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous infection, and the priest shall look at him and pronounce him unclean. But if the bright spot is white on the skin of his body, and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and its hair has not turned white, then the priest shall shut up the infected one 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the 7th day and see if the infection appears to be as it was, and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall shut him up another 7 days. And the priest shall look at him again on the 7th day and see if the infection has darkened and the infection has not spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his garments and be clean. But if the scab spreads further over the skin after he has been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again, and the priest shall look and see if the scab has spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. When the infection of leprosy is on a man, then he shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall look and see if the swelling on the skin is white, and it has turned the hair white, and there is a spot of raw flesh in the swelling, it is an old leprosy on the skin of his body, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He does not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if leprosy breaks out all over the skin, and the leprosy shall cover all the skin of the infected one, from his head to his foot, whatever the priest looks, then the priest shall look and see if the leprosy has covered all his body, he shall pronounce the infected one clean. It has all turned white. He is clean. But the day raw flesh appears on him, he is unclean. And the priest shall look at the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. Raw flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. Or when the raw flesh changes and turns white again, he shall come to the priest, and the priest shall look at him and see if the infection has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce the infected one clean. He is clean. And when the body has a boil in the skin and it is healed, and in the place of the boil there comes a white swelling or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be seen by the priest. And the priest shall look and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and its hair has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection which has broken out of the boil. But if the priest looks at it and sees no white hairs in it, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it has spread further over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in its place, it has not spread, it is the scar of the boil. And the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the body receives a burn on its skin by fire, and the raw flesh of the burn shall become a bright spot, reddish, white, or white, then the priest shall look at it and see if the hair of the bright spot has turned white, and it appears deeper than the skin, it is leprosy broken out in the burn. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the priest looks at it and sees there are no white hairs in the bright spot, and it is not deeper than the skin, but has faded, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look at him on the seventh day. If it spreads further over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprous infection. But if the bright spot stays in its place and has not spread on the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar from the burn. And when a man or a woman has an infection on the head or in the beard, then the priest shall look at the infection and see if it appears deeper than the skin, and there is thin yellow hair in it, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an eruption, a leprosy of the head or beard. But when the priest looks at the infection of the eruption and sees that it does not appear deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up the one with the infection of the eruption 7 days. And on the seventh day, the priest shall look at the infection and see if the eruption has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and the eruption does not appear deeper than the skin, then he shall shave himself, but the eruption he does not shave. And the priest shall shut up the one with the eruption another 7 days. And on the seventh day, the priest shall look at the eruption and see if the eruption has not spread over the skin and does not appear deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his garments, and he shall be clean. But if the eruption spreads further over the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look at him and see if the eruption has spread over the skin. The priest need not seek for yellow hair, he is unclean. But if the eruption appears to have stayed and there is black hair grown up in it, the eruption has healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. And when a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of the body, white bright spots, then the priest shall look and see if the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin. He is clean. And when a man loses the hair of his head, he is bald. He is clean. And if the hair has fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead. He is clean. And when there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white infection, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. And the priest shall look at it and see if the swelling of the infection is reddish white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy on the skin of the body, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean. Without fail, his infection is on his head. As for the leper who has the infection, his garments are torn, and his head is uncovered, and he has to cover his upper lip and cry, unclean, unclean. He is unclean. All the days he has the infection, he is unclean. He is unclean, and he dwells alone. His dwelling place is outside the camp. And when a garment has an infection of leprosy in it, in a woolen garment, or in a linen garment, or in the warp, or in the weft of linen or wool, or in leather, or in any leather work, and the infection shall be greenish or reddish in the garments, or in the leather, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, it is an infection of leprosy, and shall be shown to the priest. And the priest shall look at the infection, and shut up the infected 7 days. And he shall look at the infection on the seventh day. And when the infection has spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in the leather, or any leather work, the infection is an active leprosy. It is unclean. And he shall burn that garment, or the warp, or the weft, in wool, or in linen, or any leather object in which the infection is, for it is an active leprosy. It is burned with fire. But if the priest looks and sees that the infection has not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, then the priest shall give command, and they shall wash that in which the infection is, and he shall shut it up another 7 days. And the priest shall look at the infection after it has been washed, and see if the infection has not changed its appearance, though the infection has not spread, it is unclean, and burn it in the fire. It is eaten away in its inside or outside. And if the priest shall look and see that the infection has faded after washing it, then he shall tear it out of the garment, or out of the warp, or out of the weft, or out of the leather. And if it is still seen in the garment, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, it is a spreading infection. Burn it with fire, that in which the infection is. And if you wash the garment, or the warp, or the weft, or any leather object, if the infection has disappeared from it, then it shall be washed a second time, and shall be clean. This is the Torah of the infection of leprosy in a garment of wool or linen, or in the warp, or in the weft, or in any leather object, to pronounce it clean, or to pronounce it unclean. Chapter 14. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe, saying, This shall be the Torah of the leper for the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go out of the camp And the priest shall look and see if the leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the priest shall command, and he shall take for him who is to be cleansed 2 live and clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. Let him take the live bird, and the cedar wood, and the scarlet, and the hyssop, and dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird that was slain over the running water. And he shall sprinkle it 7 times on him who is to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the live bird loose in the open field. And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and shall be clean. Then, after that, he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside his tent 7 days. And on the 7th day, it shall be that he shaves all the hair off his head, and his beard, and his eyebrows, even all his hair he shaves off. And he shall wash his garments, and wash his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day, he takes 2 male lambs, perfect ones, and 1 ewe lamb, a year old, a perfect one, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. And the priest who is cleansing shall present the man who is to be cleansed with these offerings before YAHUAH at the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb and bring it as a guilt offering, and the log of oil, and wave them as a wave offering before YAHUAH. And he shall slay the lamb in the place where he slays the sin offering and the ascending offering, in a set apart place. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most set apart. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand. And the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before YAHUAH. And of the rest of the oil in his hand, the priest put some on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed. And the priest shall make atonement for him before YAHUAH. And the priest shall make the sin offering and make atonement for him who is to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Then afterwards he slays the ascending offering, and the priest shall offer the ascending offering and the grain offering on the slaughter place. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if he is poor and is unable to afford it, then he shall take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, and one shall be a sin offering, and the other an ascending offering. And he shall bring them to the priest on the 8th day for his cleansing, to the door of the tent of appointment before YAHUAH. And the priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before YAHUAH. And he shall slay the lamb of the guilt offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the priest pours some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before YAHUAH. And the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the guilt offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he puts on the head of him who is to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before YAHUAH. And he shall prepare one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, such as he is able to afford, that which he is able to afford, the one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering, with the grain offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him who is to be cleansed before YAHUAH. This is the Torah for one who had an infection of leprosy, who is unable to afford for his cleansing. And YAHUAH spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possession, then shall the one who owns the house come and inform the priest, saying, it seems to me that there is some plague in the house. Then the priest shall command, and they shall empty the house before the priest goes in to look at the plague, so that all that is in the house is not made unclean. And after that the priest goes in to look at the house, and he shall look at the plague and see if the plague is on the walls of the house with sunken places, greenish or reddish, which appear to be deep in the wall. Then the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day and look and see if the plague has spread on the wall of the house. Then the priest shall command that they shall remove the stones with the plague in them, and they shall throw them outside the city into an unclean place, while he lets the house be scraped inside all around, and the dust that they scrape off they shall pour out in an unclean place outside the city. And they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and take other mortar and plaster the house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house, after he has removed the stones, after he has scraped the house, and after it is plastered, then the priest shall come and look and see if the plague has spread in the house. It is an active leprosy in the house. It is unclean. and he shall break down the house, its stones, and its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and he shall bring them outside the city to an unclean place. And he who goes into the house all the days while it is shut up becomes unclean until evening. And he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who eats in the house has to wash his garments. However, if the priest indeed comes in and looks at it and sees that the plague has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And to cleanse the house, he shall take 2 birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop, and he shall slay one of the birds in an earthen vessel over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet, and the live bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, and in the running water, and shall sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall thus cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and the running water, and the live bird, and with the cedar wood, and with the hyssop, and with the scarlet. And he shall let the live bird loose outside the city in the open field, and shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy and eruption, and for leprosy of a garment and of a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the Torah of leprosy.